Okay, so my topics for today is some overview of how can you fine-tune connections to meet your needs or to allow new or cool features to your users. And now let's see what we can cover in this deck. And in general, there is a lot of configuration options in connections. I know that long time or very experienced connection administrators know more of them, but this session is target for non-technical users. We will cover some features more than how to configure them. And I would consider it to be, let's say, beginner or intermediate level. So if you use connections for 10 years, you most likely know all of it. But I believe that for many people, there can be various interesting points. We'll also cover where the configuration is stored and how to change it, just for illustration, how to work with the product. If you don't know me, I work as a manager in Whitesoft. It's a Czech-Belgian company. I'm located in Czech Republic, in Pilsen, and I'm a kind of connection addict person from the very beginning, which was version 2.5 about 10 years ago. But nowadays I work or I'm related to connections project more or less like a project manager or architect. I'm an occasional administrator. Because I'm so-called a WebSphere guy, so if there is something related to the old stack, my colleagues call me, look, this is in WebSphere, I don't want to touch it, explain me this or that. So I do mostly some troubleshooting, but I like to keep my hands dirty with the technology, but I'm not working with it on a daily basis. I'm also a long time with social connections / Let'sConnect since 2013, and I was IBM champion and I'm HCL ambassador now. But let's start. The introduction is the only little technical part. So let's check what we can do in connections regarding customization or fine tuning. What's it provided with the product? Yeah, and if you use connections for several years, you know that with every new version, every new cumulative release, there are some cool features which are available to the users, but they must be enabled. And there is this kind of philosophy or strategy of former IBM, now HCL, that many of these features are not enabled by default. I don't know why. Maybe Adam can answer in the questions or QA later. And during the years, we develop a kind of checklist. So what must be done, what should be enabled for mostly every customer, because there is one unpleasant thing that during upgrades of connections, most of the customizations or settings are gone. So you have to start over. And also every customer has a different setup, different environment, different version. So we need to keep track of what has been enabled for who, and repeat the customization or the configuration with every version. The checklist is unfortunately in my local language, so it makes no sense to share it here with you. But I will cover most of the points during this deck. We can start to look where is the configuration actually stored, and it's unfortunately located in different pieces or places. Sorry. So some of the configuration, mostly the technical part, is within the WebSphere application server, but the main store or for configurations are XML files which are located on the file systems and installed with the product. And also you can enable some features or customize some behavior by editing the themes. So it's not enough to work with the XML files. You have sometimes also change the JSP files or CSS styles to achieve the desired result. And some of part of the configuration is also in the web server itself, or also called web server plugin, or in a little piece in the connection database. So there are many places you have to touch with every installation, and just to illustrate it for non-technical users, we have a tool which is called WS Admin, which which allows through some configuration services to work with the connections core config service, or with each application, and alter some parameters which are more or less technical. So nothing very interesting here for users. What is good is that this tool covers more and more with every connections version, but still you can't do everything with this tool. So sooner or later you have to visit the Lotus Connections configuration folder and look into the XML files and check what is here. And sometimes you can find quite interesting information or tips what you can do here. Only a part of the files is documented, and these files are replaced with every upgrade. So this is the reason why you have to start again with if you do installation of a new version of connections. So you have to port the old configuration into the new, or at least this is how we do it with side-by-side installs, because that allow us low disruption of service for customers, and better testing and staging and so on. There's also an interesting part. It's called Gatekeeper. This is not very documented or mentioned in the info center. Maybe again, Adam or somebody from HCL can comment how much this is intended to be used by administrators nowadays. But you can change many of the settings here, and as far as I know, some settings such as round-trip editing can be controlled only from this interface. So there is about 300 settings, or at least a few hundred of them, and you can use these switches to enable or disable the features. And in these general settings, which are related to the connections as the platform, you can for example, enable or disable some of the connections part, which are called applications. So the question is the question is why you should do it. Yeah, but for example, we use these features or this capability to disable metrics, because we don't use recognize-based metrics with any customer, so we need to disable this in application if it is accidentally installed. You can also change application URLs, locations, which might be sometimes useful, but not very often. So the biggest deal here is to work with access control list, especially you most likely, if your connection environment is accessible from internet, you want to disable anonymous access to all applications. Otherwise, everybody can see what you have in your public communities, and sooner or later they will get indexed by Google, and you will be surprised that your internal information is accessible on the internet. So this is one very important part that almost every customer wants, because I would say that every of our customer has connections facing to the internet. I know that some customers use it as an intranet tool, and they want to have autonomous access enabled, but usually we disable it for every customer. And then we will look to several applications. So what we can see what is possible to do here or there. And let's start with homepage. And the most straightforward part is the top bar. So it means you can change your logo, or you can add extra menus to to your connection environment, which is usually described in all the customization tutorials. So I don't want to go further. I want to focus on the features, and one of them is that you can enable logout or disable logout possibility. There is a menu item for that. And some customers need it to be enabled because they don't use any single sign-on, and the other customers want to have it disabled because they want to log out users through single sign-on system. So this is a little example what can be done here. Then it's language selector. Many customers even don't know that something like that exists, but we live in Central Europe, so usually our customers use local language plus some of the international languages, English, German, French, whatever. So usually they want only a couple of languages to be enabled in a drop-down menu. Usually connections are configured in such way that your language is determined automatically by your browser settings, but using this language selector, you can override the behavior, which is useful for many situations. And unfortunately, it does not work for docs. So this is a tip here. So if you enable these settings, then you may hear from customers that in docs, I have everything in English, for example. And the reason is that they have their browser in English, but their connection settings in docs. Sorry, in connections. So connections are in local language and docs are in the browser language. There is a aha idea for this. So if you think this is also an issue for you, you may vote there, and hopefully this will be somehow sometimes improved. So language customer here in Europe is wanted by every customer. Then you can install or enable type ahead search for everything. I mention it here because it somehow belongs under the home page. And with the latest version of connections, I mean 6 and newer, we have type ahead for communities by default. But if you want to have type ahead for the general search, you need to install either the old Solar, which is now deprecated, so you have to go to the new stack and install Elasticsearch to have a better search experience. So again, customers sometimes don't know about it and use only the plain search settings, which is a pity because they can use something better. Then under homepage, there belongs also email notifications. You definitely know email notifications. They are enabled by default. They can be controlled by administrators regarding the default settings. But what you might want to have here is custom templates. Okay? Connections come from the very old days with templates for email notifications, but from version, I think it's 6.0, there is a new template system with better options, so you can improve the look and feel of your notifications. So we can change colors and text to make sure corporate standards. And what is usually wanted by users is to display profile photos. Because if you get, nowadays it's quite standard or expected to have avatar pictures of your colleagues in the notifications. So this is also wanted by many users. Unfortunately, there is a point of caution here that the profiles photos are linked from the email, so they are not included as attachments. So you have usually enable anonymous access to the profiles. Otherwise your photos are broken in the newsletters. which has also some other impact on privacy and other issues. And let's move to files, which are also very interesting, and files are usually heavily used in connections. So if you have docs, you purchase this license, you have to you can enable online editors for Office formats, both the old and the new. This is more as a sales issue than a product issue, but many customers or many users have no idea that this feature exists. Yeah, the docs are not so powerful, but they can come handy in many situations when you need co-editing, or if you work with simple Office files. But you have to enable them anyway. And if you have this, you have an edit in docs menu item next to every file, and you can use this feature. And another useful feature is round-trip editing. So it means that you can edit files via desktop connectors. It means that you install a little piece of software on your Windows or Mac OS machine, and you can work easily without need to download files, save it, edit, and upload again. This works only for Windows, or it was my fault. It's not supported in Macs. Hopefully, HCL will improve this soon, and you have also to enable it. Yeah, I sometimes encounter a new connections customer who use connections for many years, and they have this feature disabled. So if you don't have it enabled, then your users would be annoyed by the cumbersome editing procedures. So please check that you have this enabled. And there are some other little glitches, like that you have to enable preview or thumbnails of the old Office files. The default settings is only for the new files. So I believe that experienced admin know all about these steps which are documented. And we mentioned a round-trip editing feature, and there is a second one quite similar, which is called file syncs, which means that you can synchronize connections files across several desktop. Here, this is true. This works both for Mac OS and Windows, and also across mobile devices. And this needs to be also enabled. And I have again met a couple of customers who don't have this enabled. I don't understand why. So file sync is definitely something you want. There is also one little piece of caution that works only for personal files. So you can't use file syncs for community content. You can access community content through desktop connector or Windows, but you can't file sync the files from communities. And another quite frequent requirement from customers is to upgrade file upload limits. The default value, which is I think 500 megabytes, is nowadays quite low if people upload some video files or whatever. Of course, there is also a question how large files is reasonable to upload into connections, and it's a social network, not a document repository. But sooner or later, somebody will raise these questions. It can be easily changed system-wide. You have to change the value in connection server, and if you want to upload large files through the desktop connectors, it must be also updated on the desktop side. I don't know if it's true, for the latest versions of desktop connectors, but in the, I think 1 or 2 years ago, it was still necessary to change the limit also on the client side. And the reasonable limit here are 2 gigabytes, which should be enough for everybody. And a very similar thing is to change limits of file libraries. Again, there are some default values. One of them is for personal files, and the other is for cumulative files. I think that depends how you users use the system, whether they work more with communities or more with personal files. But again, sooner or later they will ask to increase this. Here, what we do that we usually increase the default limits on the very beginning, because only very few users use the quota extensively, and because our customers don't have hundreds of thousands users, so we have no issues with this limit at all. Yeah, so definitely something you can explore if your organization needs to change these limits a bit. There are some other pieces for files, like enablement of rich editors, because some older parts of connection may use still the plain text editors. So this is a simple checkbox you can change. And let's move to profiles. Regarding profiles, the most important part is to enable external users, which are not enabled by default for security reason, which makes sense. But that also means that surprisingly more customers don't have it enabled, or they even don't know that you can enable external access for your connection environment, and especially that it is free of charge. So again, sooner or later, every of our customers wanted to have this enabled, so we now recommend to enable it by default. It's not I would say so easy. You have to adjust customization configuration on several places, and think carefully about the security implications, what will be available or which can be accessible for external users. But in general, this is something you want to have, I believe. And profiles can be quite customized regarding attributes. You can easily add custom attributes. I think that one has had a session about it a couple of years ago. Or you can manage visibility of the existing attributes, so you can say what could be seen from internal profile by internal users, from external profile by external users, and vice versa, all four combinations. So let's say if you want to have phone numbers visible for internal users but not for external users, you can achieve it. Or if you have a database with any useful information, such as your HR system, you can populate the data through TDI into the profiles application and make it available for connections users. And then communities. In communities, we have survey that are nowadays part of the product, quite popular, but not a standard part of the product, that they must be installed separately. So this means that many customers don't have it installed, or users don't know that they can use it. So this is another piece of functionality you I think definitely want to enable. So surveys. And recently I have a customer who wanted to enable mail community feature, or it was disabled for a reason. This feature enables or allows community members or community owners to send email to everybody in your community, which is quite handy if you have communities of mixed users based on their interests. So let's say you have 50 people in your community which have nothing in common, so they have nothing common in your corporate directory. except that they share some interest in your community. So in this case, it's very difficult to send them some email if you really have to send email. So this is also something you may want to enable. There was some concern that sometimes somebody sent quite a lot of emails to their colleagues, but I think that it is still pretty safe to have it enabled anyway. And we can move to blogs. In blogs, I would highlight the moderation features, which are available also for forums. And here you can enable pre-moderation or post-moderation. The moderation is quite powerful. I'm personally not a friend of moderation, so I prefer I prefer freedom of speech or freedom of blogging of people, and of course they need to take responsibility for what they publish. But if you need moderation, you can enable this this feature and then say in every blog whether it is moderated or not. And regarding blogs, there is one specific part that blogs, from historical reason, have their own file storage, which is not very large by default. So if you have a blog, then, and if people use, let's say, screenshots or photos in your blog, the internal storage will be quickly filled. With content, so you have to increase the value. And there is a good thing that I noticed that I think starting version 6.5, you can change some of these parameters directly from the user interface. So you don't have to do it in the WS admin or any XML file, which is good. Yeah, and this is an example of configuration which is stored in the database, because every blog may have different limit. And we have forums, and we are coming to the end of my presentations. In forums, except of moderation, there is one quite interesting feature, which I don't have a personal experience with it, but you can enable non-community members to comment on forums, which seems to be interesting and maybe useful in some environments. So this is also something you can explore. And usually these little pieces are not covered by release notes or presentations, so you have to dig through documentation and try to find some little gems there, or Easter eggs, or how to call it. And regarding emails, there is also a feature which might be interesting for somebody. It's a reply by email. So if you get a notification from the forum application, if configured, you can just reply to that email, and your reply is put into the forum feed. We use it for a couple of years, but we don't use it any longer, because users, especially on mobiles, they don't how to say it, delete extra content from the email, so they just use simple reply, which means that the full email with the full history is put into the forum, which makes a lot of clutter. But in certain situations, and if your users are well trained, you can use it, because if they, let's say, have only email interface, for some reason they can't use the desktop app, web app, or mobile app, whatever, they have only email, it can be convenient for them to reply to their notification emails. And that's all. So I wanted just to provide a quick overview. We spent something like 30 minutes on it. And as you could see, there are many interesting features or handy features, or maybe cool features you can enable with your existing environment. Of course, there are also a lot of technical settings which are not interesting for the general audience, so I didn't mention that. And my recommendation is that you should study the documentation. Especially administrators should study the documentation from the help center, especially for the particular version of your product, because these configuration options quite differ version to version. And as for many years documentation is provided only online, I believe that nobody is expected to read it as whole. I still remember something like more than 20 years ago when I read all the books from Novel Netware 3.11 or 3.12. Yeah, when you could really take a bookshelf of I think it was 15 books, and you can read or scroll or browse through the documentation and to understand all the opportunities. With the hypertext documentation, I believe that nobody clicks through all the items, all the pages to see what is there. But during installation, especially customers, they usually go only through the preparation step and installation step, and some of the post-installation mandatory steps. And all this stuff I covered in this presentation is in the administration section of the documentation. So you have to visit administrating files, administrating profiles, administrating homepage, and under these sections you may find what could be changed in every application. And of course, maybe you have some idea what should be possible, or you believe that such feature should exist. So if you can find it in your documentation, please check AHA, and maybe you will see that there is some demand for the feature you need. So you can vote there and try to get some extra points for features you need. And that is all from me.